Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is another episode of Karl's Spirits, and tonight on this is episode 40, and we are going to be looking at kind of what's become one of my standards around the house: Old Forester, 1897 bottled in bond. So Old Forester, 1897 bottled in bond. You can kind of see how much of a standard this has become in my household. This is about the third or fourth bottle I've been through since the fall. Just a very neat little bourbon. So this is another one of Old Forester's Whiskey Row series of bourbons. And we've previously looked at two of the four. We've looked at the 1910 Old Fine Whiskey and the 1920 Prohibition batch. And as I've mentioned when we reviewed those bourbons, Old Forester tried to put out a premium line of bourbon that had a significance to either the bourbon industry or to bourbon at Old Forester itself. And so they've got four in the series. They have an 1870, they have the 1897, the 1910, and the 1920. 1910 refers to the year of the Great Fire in Louisville that burned their warehouses and forced them to double age their spirits. And this is what gives us that double oak taste in that 1910. 1920, of course, refers to the onset of Prohibition. And Old Forester was one of Brown Foreman's Old Forester was one of six companies that survived Prohibition. So they produced all the way through producing medicinal spirits. 1897 refers to the passage of the Bottled in Bond Act. And we've discussed that previously, how that prior to this national law, bourbon was not very good. It was produced in mass quantities, sold in barrels to people called rectifiers who then bottled it and they added things to it. Everything from tobacco juice and arsenic to shoe polish. They included turpentine. They dumped raw vegetables in it to give it flavor. And so you never really quite knew what you were getting when you opened up one of these bottles from a rectifier. The bourbon industry decided to take it upon themselves to protect their business. And that's what the Bourbon or Bottled in Bond Act of 1897 is all about. With the help of Colonel E.H. Taylor, who we talked about just recently, the Bottled in Bond Act was passed by Congress, and it required bourbon to meet a set of standards. First of all, to be called a bourbon, it can have no additives whatsoever. And so that means there has nothing been added to this to give flavor or color to the spirit. So, for example, if you go to a liquor store and you're looking and you see all those flavored whiskeys on the shelf, let's say Fireball, for example. It is labeled as Fireball whiskey, not bourbon. It probably started its life as bourbon at Buffalo Trace. They do produce Fireball, although they don't disclose that very often. And it's probably the rot gut stuff that didn't quite make the taste cut for some of their lines. And so it gets dumped down into massive quantities, and then they add cinnamon flavoring or whatever to make Fireball. Or peach flavored, or whatever the case may be, green apple, or whatever from Jim Beam. It's not a bourbon anymore. It's a flavored whiskey. The Bottled in Bond Act, of course, also requires that the product be aged for a minimum of 4 years in a federally bonded warehouse. It's the product of one distiller during one distilling season. And, of course, it's going to be entered into the bottle at exactly 100 proof. And so that's what we're drinking tonight is Old Forester's homage to 1897 Bottled in Bond Act. And it meets all those requirements. It is 100 proof. It is also 72% corn, 18% rye, and 10% malted barley. It is bottled, as I said, at 100 proof, but there is no age statement. We think it's probably in the 5 to 6 to 7 year range. It is also known that it is bottled with a number 4 char, or barreled with a number 4 char. This is one of the heaviest regular chars available. It's also commonly called an alligator char. It helps give their bourbons that dark appearance in the glass. and some really great flavors and great legs as well. By the way, you can see it's a nice dark amber, or at least I hope you can. It's got great legs. They are really wavy and sticky, so they just kind of hang there. It's just really, really pretty. Even more beautiful than what it's in, how it looks in the glass, is how it smells. This has just a really warm, inviting, classic bourbon nose to me. Vanilla and honey. There's a hint of smoke here as well. And like some of the other bourbons, let it sit for a minute or two. Literally 1 minute, 2 minutes. It has an undertone of alcohol that quickly dissipates in about a minute or two. No water's required. Don't need 5 or 10 minutes, just 1 or 2 minutes, and it quickly wafts off of that delicious, delicious smell. But you're saying to yourself, self, how does this really taste? Well, it tastes good. The mouthfeel is nice. It coats the mouth well. It's just short of being oily. It's really close. It just really coats well, but it doesn't linger in the mouth. Um, you've got a rich caramel flavor. You've got a creamy vanilla. You've got a sweet honey. You've got some oak notes, oak char. There's also kind of a dark fruity note that I get, but I don't know enough to tell you what those dark fruits are. But the one other thing I do notice on this, and I really get it on the finish, as much as the mouthfeel is a little smoke taste. It's a little smoky. No, not cigarette smoke, not cigar smoke. This is a good hickory wood smoke. So probably from those charred oak barrels, you're picking up a little of that aroma. The finish is long. It's sweet. It's spicy. It is so well balanced. It really is. The sweet is a brown sugar, I think. The spice is more of a rye that gets you right on the back edges, the sides of the tongue. And again, a little bit of that smoky right in the middle of the back of the tongue sitting there. It also gives you a nice burn, not painful, just a nice warm feeling going down your throat. So overall, I really think this is a very good, well-rounded bourbon. For me, it's a very satisfying drink. And as I said at the beginning of this episode, I found myself pouring this more often than I have some of the others in my collection. It's also a little bit more accessible than some of the other Whiskey Row bottles. I like the Whiskey Row series, all 4 of them. I have all 4. The 1910 is kind of hard to find, although there's a place in Cape Girardeau currently selling it, or they were. And if you were to compare this spirit in this bottle, this 1897 100 proof, to the Old Forester Signature 100 proof, I would say simply that this is its big brother. It has aged longer, probably about 2 to 3 years longer, and as such, it has a much more mature taste. It's the same mash bill. It's the same proof, but the age here is what really makes a difference. Now, I will also say that extra year or 2, maybe 3 of aging comes with a price tag, about $20. The Signature 100 from Old Forester is in the mid-20s range, $23, $24, something like that. The 1897 is in the high 40s to $50 range. So about a $20, $22 price range there for that extra couple of years of aging. But for the money, this is just a well-rounded, well-crafted bourbon, in my opinion. Obviously, I'm very partial to this. I really enjoyed just about everything about this bourbon. Are there better bourbons out there? Of course. But I really think that this is one of the more underrated, currently available, widely available bourbons that are out there. So my personal preference for the 1897 Old Forester Bottled in Bond 100 proof for Whiskey Row, my rating is going to be a 4.5 stars. Yes, I'm partial to this, but I really enjoy this drink. So, ladies, gentlemen, as always, I want you to stay safe, peace, and happy pours.